Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is my review for Finding Carter, Season 1, Episode 4, Now You See Me. And, wow, this episode was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Wow. By the way, guys, this episode made me not want to watch Tyrant anymore. It really did, because Tyrant does things in the fourth episode that a show shouldn't do, and this show did things in the fourth episode that the show should do. There were a lot of huge things in this episode, a lot of really great things in this episode, and, I'm just loving this show. It's fantastic, and it gets better and better every episode, and I love that about the show. I think that's fantastic, and I can't wait for the other episodes. I think it's gonna be fantastic, so let's just get to it. So beginning this episode, Bird invited Carter, Taylor, and Max to her art showcase because she painted a special picture in which Carter was the subject of. She wanted her to come to see it, and, Taylor and Max tagged along, basically, for moral support. They weren't invited, but they went for moral support because they care. And as soon as Carter arrived, Bird whisked her away to meet someone special, and meanwhile, Taylor and Max are kind of having small talk, and they have so much chemistry this whole episode. Taylor's awkwardly mentioning that she was not fond of large groups, and to her surprise, Max agreed, and you can really see that the two of them have so much chemistry, and I would love for Taylor and Max to get together. I really would. I've been wanting them to get together since last week, and now I really want them together. So then it's time for the big reveal of the painting. Basically they go to the painting that was covered with a big white sheet, and basically the art teacher comes out and says, there's been one student that hasn't wanted to show her artwork, and that is Bird, and I'm pretty sure her artwork is a masterpiece. And Bird mentioned that the reason that the picture was covered up the whole time was because she wanted to wait until her muse was present, which is Carter. She then removed the sheet to reveal a photo of Carter's face with half of it torn off, and she looked like a half-eaten zombie. And, Carter's obviously upset about this. She's obviously upset about this. She stares at the photo, and I will understand why her friend would do this to her. And you know what? I really like the focus on Bird in this episode. This episode really focused on Carter and Bird's friendship and their friendship and everything, and I really like that about this episode. So then back at home, Carter and Taylor, they're kind of arguing about how Carter is more, Taylor, is arguing with Carter about how Carter is more popular than she is, and, Carter actually tells her she doesn't like the negative attention. She says, you think I like the negative attention? I don't like the negative attention at all. And, basically, David then decides to change the subject and tells them he wants them to go look at used cards. He gives them a catalog, and, basically that's what he decides to do. However, Elizabeth does not, and we'll talk about this, when we get to, Elizabeth and David's plot. That definitely, so, yeah. So then, basically, the next day, Carter and Taylor walked into school, and Taylor wondered if Bird's painting would be hanging in the hallway. And Carter, is pretty sure that Bird would not do this to her again. She's pretty confident that it's only going to happen once, and that's it. It's not going to happen again. She's pretty sure it's not going to happen again. Because, she asked Bird specifically to take it down. However, as soon as she walked in around the corner, she saw hundreds of flyers on the walls with Bird's painting on them. Now, that was honestly really creepy when this happened, because, it was just really creepy. Carter begins to rip down the flyers, and Taylor tells her it's gonna take all day, and she tells her she doesn't care. The bell rings for class, and, Gabe offers to help her, which is pretty sweet, because he realized it would take her all day, and, so then Max is doing now back at home, Max is doing laundry, and he got one of his shirts dirty. He got one of not Lori. He got one of Elizabeth's shirts dirty. There was basically earlier in the day, Max attempted to do he did the laundry as a way to thank them for his hospitality. Elizabeth comes over, but he got a chocolate bar in one of Elizabeth's shirts, and she joked that he should probably stay away from the laundry, but she knew that his heart was in the right place. And Max then said that he was probably not the ideal house guest, and it was time for him to move out. And he also mentioned that she should stop worrying about Carter. So Max is unfortunately going to move out, which is kind of sad, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. So basically, then what ends up happening is Carter and Gabe finish cleaning up the flyers, and surprisingly, they make their way down the stairwell, and Carter stops because she wants to say thank you, and she kisses Gabe. That was really surprising. I did not expect her to kiss Gabe, shake his hand or something, but she kissed him. So, that was huge. So yeah, that was really big, and I did not expect that. Now, a few minutes later, though, Carter discovers Bird had put up more flyers, and Carter's fiercer, she wants to take them down before she can come, and before she can, Bird comes up to her and angrily asks her, what's the matter? Did the world stop revolving around Carter? And for 1 second, she thought Bird was her friend, and, she said she thought Bird was her friend, and, basically, while this is happening, Gabe tells Ophi, that Carter kissed him. Now, Ophi's telling him, oh, this is a great thing, you're out of the friend zone, but Gabe doesn't seem like he's happy about it. I think Gabe is a little bit worried that they're just taking things a little too fast, and Gabe, I think she just kind of caught him by surprise. He wasn't expecting it, and, yeah. So, in the meantime, Carter and Bird ended up in a huge screaming match before Bird's art teacher came out of the classroom, and I really like what she said to them. She said, this is an art show. You guys are not the show. And she tells him to clean things up, and Carter and Bird, they take down the flyers, and Bird said, she wouldn't like it either, Carter did this to her, and Carter tells her it's actually very cool, and, basically they cleaned up the flyers and they made up. So that afternoon, Max said goodbye to Taylor and Grant as they stood in the front yard, and this scene was very interesting, because Max is preparing to leave, and Taylor said he's only 2 hours away, so he can visit them anytime. And then Max tells Grant he was like a brother to him and that he was awesome, and Taylor says that he thought of her like a sister. But things get very awkward between him and Taylor, because as we know, him and Taylor do sort of like each other. Because Max does like Taylor, and think of her as more of a sister, and was hoping she would say something else. And Taylor asked him, what were you going to say? And he said that she kind of snuck up on him, and Taylor asked him to come back and visit soon. He promised he would, and he leaves. So yeah, it's kind of interesting there, because the thing is, Taylor and Max, they like each other. And then we get probably one of the most surprising scenes of the episode. Even though the scene was, very surprising. I wasn't expecting it from the promo, but the way it was done was definitely very surprising. So Max is on the phone, he's calling Carter, and he's saying, hey Carter, sorry I couldn't be there, sorry I couldn't say goodbye to you, but that's not goodbye, and I'll hang up the phone. And he hangs up the phone, and then he notices that there's this woman in a baseball cap that keeps staring at him, and he decides to go up to her, and Max actually realizes that the woman was Lori. Yes, Lori, Carter's real mom, who pretended not to know him, but eventually she was caught, and he walked up to the car and asked what she was doing. And basically we find out some very big things here. Lori told, Max that she's actually hatching a plan to reunite with Carter, but that he could not tell Carter. Now, because she missed being her mother, and, we find out that Carter is actually Carter's real name. So if you remember, Elizabeth and David told her that Carter's not her real name, but it is her real name. She's planning to reunite with Carter, and then in 2 weeks she can leave all this behind and go back to the way things were. And this makes us very suspicious of Carter's new family. She says every day is hard, and she thinks that Carter is suffering, and she says all that matters is that this is almost over. Now that's very interesting. There's something going on here. There's something else going on. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something else going on here, because Lori's obviously not her kidnapper. There's something else going on that someone's not telling Carter. And then we get what I was very happy about. I love this scene. we actually get to see Bird's life, what Bird's life is like. Because Bird and Carter go to Bird's house, and we actually find out something big about Bird. And I love this scene because this scene actually got us to care for Bird. I loved how much this episode focused on Bird and Carter's friendship. I really love that about this episode, the way it focused on the two of them and their friendship. Basically, we find out that her parents are not, basically, Bird sees this bag full of cash weighing on the kitchen counter, and she says that what that means is that her parents are going to be gone for a while, and basically, she doesn't make a big deal about it, but basically, her parents are pretty much gone most of her life, and they don't really, see her most of the time. She's pretty used to this, and Carter is kind of, upset. She's about to order takeout and everything, but Carter asks her if she gets lonely, and Bird tells her she has vodka and fetch for that, and Carter tells her they're going to her place, and because Carter can't stand to see Bird living like this, and I thought that was good for Carter to do. Definitely Carter was a very good friend to Bird in that scene. I really like seeing that. And I just really like that scene because it really showed, what Bird's life is like. It showed why Bird is so troubled. It showed what that painting was about. It showed why Bird does drugs and things like that. And, definitely very interesting. So basically, they see Taylor cooking and everything for once seems normal at her house. Grant is talking about the photo and asking Bird, basically asking Bird, if she could paint a picture like that of him, and Bird's laughing about it, and thanks Taylor for coming to the show, and thinks that she actually thinks that Max and Taylor are dating, because they have so much chemistry, and obviously they're not, and basically then what ends up happening is, basically what ends up happening next is... What ends up happening next? Okay. So Bird then doodles in her sketch pad back at, Carter's house. And Carter sees weird drawings of a masked man. And Bird comes back and is upset, and Carter looks at it. But Carter wants to know who the face is. And before she can answer, they go to dinner. Because dinner's ready, and Taylor calls them for dinner. And Bird has actually invited Gabe and Ophi for an impromptu dinner party. And then Max comes back, who, Taylor's very happy about this. She says, you're back and everything. And he tells them that he's actually moving there. And he talked to his parents, and they told him he can live wherever he wants, as long as he supports himself. And you know what? I think that's great that he's going to live there, because he's happy there. He's like a member of their family, and he likes it there. So I'm pretty sure he's going to continue to live there. And Taylor basically asks him where he's planning on staying, and he says he's hoping he can stay with them till he has enough money to look for apartments. And Taylor seems pretty happy about this. And then Bird invites herself over to sleep over as well. And Carter says she can. Ophi and Gabe want to sleep over too, and Bird says they can too, but Taylor's a little bit worried about what Elizabeth is going to think, because, Elizabeth might be a little bit uptight over this. She goes up to Carter and says, does she think this is her house? I thought that was kind of funny. But when Elizabeth comes home, this is probably one of the most surprising scenes so far we've seen of Elizabeth. Elizabeth's fine with it. She's fine with it. She's like, alright, fine, you can do it, just don't make too much noise. And Taylor and Carter, are really shocked about this. And, basically, I love this line. Taylor says to Carter, you don't think she's doing drugs, right? I thought that was hilarious because, Elizabeth is usually so uptight about everything. And for once, she was actually very laid back about something. And I was very surprised about that. So, Taylor's then cooking brownies, and Max comes up to her, and she asks him why he came back, and he said because she told him to. And, they decide to cook together, and, they're just showing so much chemistry, and it's just like, get together now, because they're the best couple, they're the best, potential couple on the show, in my opinion. So, Gabe and Ophi are playing cards, and they're talking about what he should do with Carter. Ophi tells him to go for it, basically, he's at her house, and since he's at her house, why doesn't he just try to go for it and try to be with her and everything? But Gabe doesn't know if it's the best timing. And honestly, I understand Gabe's logic. He doesn't want to take things too fast with her. He's only known her for a couple of weeks. He hasn't known her forever. he's known her for a little bit, and he doesn't want to go too fast with her, because if he goes too fast with her, then there's nothing else, that he might ruin their possible relationship. He does really want to be in a relationship with her. He just does not know if the timing is right, so I completely understand that. So yeah, I thought that was definitely a very good scene. I really like the scenes with Ophi and Gabe in this episode. Very good friends of them. I liked it, definitely. Kind of reminding me a little bit of Scott and Styles a little bit, because, Ophi's kind of like Styles, and, it just kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Basically, then Carter and Bird then finally talked about the drawings, because, Carter said because Bird was kind of upset that Carter looked in her sketch pad, and, Carter basically told her that, what were those drawings with no eyes, and she said it was about a man in a mask, and that he, the guy that the man in the picture was wearing a mask, and the painting, she never thought of as a painting of Carter. She thought of it as a painting of herself, and Carter was basically her muse. She just put it on Carter because Carter was what inspired her, and they hug it out and everything, and Max then comes up to them, and him and Carter talk, and probably we get, the last scene in the episode, he tells her she has a pretty good life here, even including Elizabeth, who has her qualities too, and she keeps asking him about Taylor, but he doesn't bring it up. And she says he's always a part of their family, and then she asks her what she would do if she heard from Lori, and she says, who? Now, basically, what we're seeing here is that she has actually realized that she has forgotten about Lori. And, Max is like, Lori, your mom. And she's very upset at what she did. She said it meant nothing. She looks at a picture of her and Lori. She seems very upset, and that's how the episode ends. And honestly, you can really relate to it, because everything she's been through, she's loved Lori her entire life, and now she's kind of getting distracted by her life there, and is kind of forgetting about, her actual mom, Lori. She kind of forgot about her. And I thought that scene was definitely very well done. I really enjoyed it, and I really loved the main plot of this episode. I love that it got you to care for Bird, that really got you to care for, her friend Bird. I really love her, the character of Bird now. I love that we saw more of Lori. That's going to be interesting to see where that goes. There was a subplot to this episode, and we're going to get to that. Basically, the subplot had to do with David. David wanted Carter and Taylor to go look at these car catalogs, so he wanted to buy them a used car. And, Elizabeth does not seem happy about it. He tells her he's looking at ways to help them bond, and if they could, basically share a car. And Elizabeth cuts him off right away and said it's a great idea, but they can't do it right now, and he tells her it would just be a used car, and she tells him they can't even afford the cars they already have. She's upset at him because she doesn't even know what he's working on, and he keeps telling her, he's expecting a very large paycheck, and he keeps just saying, soon. She's asking him when, and he just keeps saying soon. And he tells her she doesn't need to get upset over buying the girls a used car, and she tells him she will feel better if they have, if they had some more money, basically, if she knew when the paycheck was going on. And honestly, I understand Elizabeth's logic here. She wants to know what her husband is doing. He's not even telling her that, and he's not telling her anything, really. She wants to know it's her husband, and the thing is, David, you're her husband. You're supposed to tell her what you're doing. You don't work in the military or some sort of job where you can't tell people what you're working on. You work as a writer. You can tell her what you're writing. I mean, it's not like you're working in the military or something where you can't tell her what you're working on. It's not classified. You can tell her what you're working on, and you can just... I don't like that he's hiding things from his wife. I completely understand Elizabeth's logic here. I completely do. Definitely. So then later in the episode, this is after Bird comes home, and they're eating dinner and everything. Basically... David, David comes up to them, shows them the car keys, and he got them a used car, and they go outside to check it out, and Elizabeth wants to know, if David got the check, but he says he did not yet get it, and she seems very upset about this, and she says they have a problem, because their bank balance is already very low. Their bank balance is not enough to pay for the car. Because, and I understand this, they needed to pay for things like mortgage, electric bill, the water bill. They don't have enough money to pay for a car. They just don't, because they don't have that much money. That's just how it is. And basically things like that. And she tells him he needs to return the car, and he tells her that he can't. It's used, and he tells her to just trust him, that everything is going to be fine, and she's still not satisfied because he's still not telling her what he's working on and what he's writing, and he doesn't tell her, and he tells her it hurts, and she believes in him, that she believes him, and she says it adds to the list of things that he thinks hurts, and basically she then has to do what she doesn't want to do. She has to call her mom, who comes over the next day along with her, husband, and they talk, along with Carter and Taylor, their grandmother, their grandfather, Carter and Taylor, and Elizabeth. And Taylor says, basically, Carter's only really concerned about the money, because obviously they both want the car. And Taylor says you want to make her happy, call her Gammy, because that's what she used to call her when she was older. And then, that's what, Carter does. She calls, her, grandmother Gammy, and, she then puts the money in Elizabeth's, bank account. And she goes, and then Elizabeth then goes back to David's study, and she tells him it's done. She apologizes to him she apologized to him. However, she tells him she's tired of hearing the word soon, and he tells her he has lost confidence in himself, and he wants to make it up to her, and buying the car made him feel good about himself, but the way he talks about her, doesn't seem like she's his wife. It seems like she's his accountant. And she then tells him she has to go to work to clean up some paperwork, and while she is there, she sees Kyle, who tells her she's not supposed to be here, and wonders why she is here, and he tells her they are friends, and they can still, and basically, this was very surprising, they can still talk, and she then surprisingly starts to make out with him, and tries to start up their affair again, and he tells her he can't do it unless it's over with David. And she lies and says it's so over with him. They resume to making out and probably having sex. So she has started up her affair again. And that's how the episode ended. And wow, this episode was amazing. I love this episode. I thought this episode was so well done. I can't wait for the next episode. Just wow, this episode did everything a fourth episode should do. It got us to care more for the side characters. It had a little bit more conflict going on with Elizabeth and David. I really liked the subplot in this episode. We saw more of Elizabeth and David. And it didn't just focus on Carter and Taylor. I liked that it focused on her parents a little bit. Now, my question here is, what is actually going on here? There's clearly something that's going on, because Lori says that, Carter's her real name, and Lori clearly does care for Carter, so what is she hiding? I really don't know. Either Elizabeth and David are hiding something from her. Somebody is hiding something from Carter. I don't know what it is. We'll have to see. Also, what's going to happen with Bird? Her parents are gone. Is Bird possibly going to live with Carter? Because, Bird doesn't really have much of a home right now. So is Bird going to possibly live with Carter? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. I just poked myself in the eye. Ouch. Sorry. I poked myself in the eye on camera. That's not good. Yeah, I know. It's so professional. Max and Taylor. I really want Max and Taylor to get together. They have so much chemistry right now. They really do. I know, it's a little early for them to get together. They're probably going to wait till the end of the season, but I really would love for them to get together, because when Max is around Taylor, Taylor's not as uptight. She's happy and things like that, and I like seeing Taylor and Carter kind of bonding as sisters as well. I like seeing them, that they're bonding as sisters. They're not fighting over Gabe or anything. Also, Gabe. What do you think is going to happen with Gabe? Gabe obviously wants to wait with Carter, but do you think that he's going to try to pursue a relationship with her? I don't know. All Taylor did was kiss him, so we'll have to see what happens there, but it's something going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in the next episode as far as Taylor and, Carter and Gabe go, as far as that goes. And then as far as Elizabeth goes, she has started up her affair with Kyle again. Obviously, David's going to find out eventually, so what's going to happen there, we're definitely going to have to see. And is David going to finally tell Elizabeth what he's working on? Because he should tell her, because she's his wife, so he should tell her. But that's my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for... I'm actually going to pause on my classic movie reviews, guys, because I want to review a couple movies from this year. So I'm going to review actually a movie from this year. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.